Welcome back to another edition of the Penn State 365 podcast. I'm your host, Richie O'Leary, and joined as always when we're talking Penn State football recruiting, Penn State athletics in general. My co-host, Dylan Callahan-Crawley. Dylan, big week ahead. James Franklin just spoke with the media at his weekly press conference. I guess, what are your just initial thoughts from what he said? I know he didn't really give a straight answer on Drew Allar and Anthony Donkow and Denai Dennis Sutton's status, but he did talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst case scenario if you're a Penn State fan coming out of this past weekend. I mean, Penn State's obviously going to need the likes of, or would love to have the availability of Drew Allar, Denai Dennis Sutton, Anthony Donkow to all be, ready to go. That's obviously not necessarily the case right now. I think it's fair to say Drew and DDS are both game time decisions heading into the weekend. Anthony Donkow seems like he'll be ready to go, but I mean, we've seen him leave each of the last 3-4 games with injuries. So we'll see what happens there. He said Nolan Rucci will play at right tackle as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these injuries go over the course of the week. I imagine we'll see both Drew and DDS out there on the practice field on Wednesday. But as James said, both guys are going to be, basically game time decisions for the Nittany Lions on Saturday. And it'll be interesting to see how both of those play out over the course of this week, because those are definitely two injuries that are going to have a big factor on this game. I think Penn State can win the game even without those two players, but it would make it significantly more difficult, I think, as well.
Yeah, I thought his comments on Drew were a little interesting. I'm actually in the boat where I don't know if we're going to see Drew at practice this week. I think that there's a chance he might not. Well, he'll be there, I'm sure, but I think he's going to be in a limited role in practice. I know we don't get to see the full practices, but in that little session that we do get to see, I do think Drew's just going to be very, very limited. He made it seem, he's like, these guys have snaps under their belt, and you would love to get them to practice, of course, and go full speed. But if you can't, you want to save him for Saturday. If you can, make sure he's out there. But
right.
I guess my question to you is, do you feel Bo has proven himself enough that he can come in and actually win this game?
Proven himself enough? Probably not. I mean, we've seen him one time for extensive play, and that was this past week against Wisconsin, and he did really well. But this is a whole different level of a team in Ohio State and a different level of game. I think Bo definitely has a lot of confidence coming out of the Wisconsin game, and that could help Penn State going into this weekend if he is the quarterback. But yeah, I mean, if Bo is the starting quarterback, yeah, they can still win the game. But it goes from a toss-up, in my opinion, with Drew to a game in which Penn State will definitely need their defense to, and honestly, even if Drew plays, I think this is a game where whoever's defense really gets that one big turnover really in the second half probably is going to win this game, because I think ultimately it's going to be a low-scoring game that is decided on a last-minute touchdown or even a late field goal. But yeah, I think if Bo is the guy, it becomes increasingly more difficult. And yeah, going back to answering your question, probably hasn't proven himself enough yet. But unfortunately for Penn State, if he is the guy, this is going to be his chance to prove himself, because otherwise it is a big question mark.
Yeah, I did find it interesting that, and I get it, you have to prepare the backup no matter what, but the fact that he said, I need to prepare all three quarterbacks this week, whether Drew can go or not, obviously still to be determined, but the fact that he hyped up Grunk quite a bit. So if Bo does struggle, do you think he'll have like a kind of a short leash and just be like, hey, like, we need to win this game? Like, well, I'll do whatever it takes. It's a true freshman, so I mean, it's crazy to throw him out there.
No, I don't think Grunk is going to play in this game, barring an injury to Bo. And if Drew can't go, so I think the only way Grunk sees field is if Drew and Bo are out for an extended period of time in the game. I think having Grunk ready is just emergency situation, precaution. Because let's be honest, this game in a way is one of the bigger games for Penn State in the James Franklin era, but at the same time, after winning last week with the schedule that lies ahead, this game really doesn't change a whole ton for Penn State this year. If they win, great. You're 8-0. You're going to have a really significant chance to go 12-0 and compete for a Big Ten championship against Oregon in Indianapolis, assuming Oregon wins out, which I expect they will. And if you lose, yeah, you didn't get over the Ohio State hump. That's definitely, going to be a talking point after the game. People will bring it up, of course. James Franklin can win the big game will be the talking point. But at the same time, I mean, if you're Penn State, I think, would you potentially rather, be an 11-1 team, be the first team out of the, one of the first teams out in the playoffs, get the 5 or 6 seed, host a home playoff game, and then, in the second round, you get one of the weaker conference winners, whether that's, the Big 12 winner or the ACC winner. I think Penn State could beat either team that comes out of those conferences. So I think while this is a big game for Penn State, it's also not necessarily the game that it has been to level the last few years. This is not a make or break game for Penn State. Penn State could absolutely, take a loss this week, and it really doesn't affect them. As long as they win the games they should the rest of the way, all the goals this team has are still on the table overall.
Yeah, very much so. Defensive line, I know we just hit on it a little bit with denied Dennis Sutton potentially being out, being in. It's game time decision. I thought the interesting thing, though, he mentioned Smith Vilbert, who I thought was kind of cool because he said that he actually wanted to move him to defensive tackle previously, but that D tackle room just got really deep, and he also raved about Zane Durant. Max Granville he mentioned, who was it, Min Vanover. So they should be able to fill that void even if he can't play I shouldn't say easily, but...
Yeah, Dennis Sutton is such a intriguing player because one of the better players in the country in getting pressures and getting to the quarterback, one of the nation's leaders in QB hits, but he's not getting to the quarterback quick enough to get those sacks this season. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there. So I think his presence would be one that you absolutely miss because I do think there is a drop-off from DDS to Smith Vilbert or Vanover, but I think it's also a.
I agree, man. I agree with Bryce over there. I don't think it's I don't think it's as easy to replace him as you think, and he's trying to disagree with you a little bit actually. But picking up where you kind of left off, there's definitely a gap. But I do think that those guys are veterans between Vanover, between Smith Vilbert. I shouldn't say Max Granville's a veteran, but between the three of those guys, they should be able to at least fill the void a little bit. Maybe they're not going to turn into a bunch of sacks or sack numbers this weekend, but I think they'll be able to create pressure, and that's all you can really ask for on Ohio State with Will Howard, who tends to get the ball out relatively quickly.
Yeah, and that's been the the game plan against Penn State all year for opposing offenses, right? Get the ball out early, avoid taking those sacks, and it's worked well. Penn State is not getting to the quarterback to the level they have the last few years. And I think that's going to be what we see again out of Ohio State this weekend. That being said, I'll be interested to see how Penn State attacks the left side of that Ohio State offensive line. They're down both their number 1 and number 2 left tackles this season. It's going to be a very intriguing matchup. Do they put Abdul Carter on that side more heavily, or do they keep him on the right side? That being said, I think that's a matchup where Penn State could take advantage, whether it's Abdul Carter or somebody like an Amin Vanover or Smith Vilbert.
Yeah, no, for sure. Other things James Franklin said, I know there's a lot of hype around the media around this game. They asked him about NIL. I don't think there's really anything else going through that press conference again that really stood out to me. I think it was all very basic stuff. We're going to use this as a recruiting weekend. We're going to talk about NIL a little bit, but he kind of credited his staff in that regard. Andy Koltanicki they talked about a little bit, which I forgot about that one. He did say that he interviewed Andy Koltanicki for the tight ends job before hiring Ty Howell, so that's a cool little tidbit.
Yeah, I think he brought that up too in the in when he hired Andy. But it's definitely Andy's been on the radar for a while, and James has always been great, just as like he has been at identifying players. He's great at identifying up and coming coaches, and Andy was has been one of those coaches for a long time, and now he's getting a chance to prove what he can do at a major school like Penn State, and I think Andy's been a godsend for the Nittany Lions this year, and I don't want to say Bo is a better fit for what Andy does, but I think there is a different flow and maybe a little bit of a better flow to the offense when Bo was on the field this past week against Wisconsin compared to Drew. And I do apologize to our other listeners for my little one making some remarks here of his own. But yeah, I think Andy's done a great job this year, and Andy's going to have to do a great job this weekend against Ohio State, especially if it's Bo at quarterback. If the Nittany Lions are going to come out with a victory, this is not only would that be a Bo Buell legacy game, this could be an Andy Koltaniki legacy game really as well.
That's a really good point. I know Andy obviously had a mobile quarterback during his time at Kansas, and Jalen Daniels, so it does make sense to have a little bit of mobility back there. But yeah, we'll kind of have to wait and see what they do at the quarterback position. Press conference, it's really all I got from that one. I do want to bring up the fact that this guy right here kind of gave a little bit of bulletin board material to Penn State. If this is too loud, just tell me, because it's usually pretty loud.
Stoked.
It's a good vibe.
Me, grew up a Penn State fan. I wanted to go there my whole life. I didn't think I was good enough. But I guess we'll see next week if I was.
I find that ironic for the sole fact that Ohio State also didn't offer you out of high school. There was like only, I think, 3 or 4 Power 5 programs that offered you out of high school. So to kind of use this as I'm mad they never offered me because I'm a Pennsylvania kid is kind of corny in my opinion, but that's...
Yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, yeah, Will was a quality prospect coming out of, I think, downtown West. But I mean, at the same time, there's a reason he only had the offers he did. He wasn't a major recruit. I mean, he just simply wasn't the level of a Penn State quarterback at that time when he was coming out. And yeah, like you said, Ohio State didn't want him coming out of high school too. And I still think if it's Will versus Drew on Saturday, that Penn State has the better quarterback. I mean, it's not a personal thing. I also think you could put most quarterback. I mean, can you imagine what Ohio State would be with Drew at quarterback compared to Will? And that's nothing against Will, but Will is not a... Between Will and Drew, one of them is a future NFL starting quarterback, most likely. The other one may get a training camp invite. And Will isn't the starter. And little guy here agrees.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, I'll be interested to see how Will plays on Saturday. Does that factor kind of overamp him a little bit too much for this game? Does he come out a little bit too fiery? Tries to make some plays that aren't there, makes a bad turnover or something early. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But that'll be definitely a storyline to watch. But I mean, if you're Drew, you could kind of say the same thing about Ohio State. And I know we had this last year already, but Drew was a guy Ohio State didn't offer until late in the cycle after he already blew up. I mean, Drew grew up an Ohio State fan. He easily could be the starting quarterback of the Buckeyes right now, but Buckeyes didn't want him then. Penn State did, and that's why he's at Penn State. And Will has had a very good college career. He's been a very good college quarterback, but at the end of the day, I'll just say, it's nothing personal, kid. I mean, it's football. It's football.
It's recruiting.
I will say though, what year was Will Howard?
That's what I was about to go look.
Because was that the year that Penn State took Micah Bowens? Because obviously Will would have been the better option there, but there was a...
He's still playing, isn't he, too?
He's somewhere. He's somewhere.
Dean Cookman. Yeah, that is the year. That is the year that they took
so I mean,
Bowens.
Will would have been a much better option than Bowens at that point. Bowens, I think, is one of the more head-scratching quarterback takes in James Franklin's era, but
Yeah.
yeah, at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Will was never going to start over Sean Clifford, and once Drew ended up on campus, Drew was always going to be the heir apparent to Clifford.
Hmm. Side note: a lot of misses in that class. I'm not going to go in depth on it, but there, it's a lot. Regardless,
yeah, I mean, and I think the results at in some games over those years following that kind of show that, yeah.
100%. Last really thing I got on. Oh, I got two things for you actually. One's kind of stupid and corny, but whiteout game. No game
Yeah.
time announcement. That's good news, I think.
All right.
But it will be a 3:30 or 8 p.m. kickoff per the Big Ten network or per the Big Ten conference.
Yeah.
Are we getting a night game? Are we getting a whiteout night game?
I think it's. I'll be interested. Is that a game that hinges? Is that kickoff hinge on Penn State winning this game? If it does, then I imagine so. I imagine so. Is Washington off this week?
I don't know. That's a good question. Let's check.
They're
They
4-4.
play-
Have lost four of their last 6 games. They've lost.
USC, so essentially not a home game, but at least a West Coast game.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. I mean, much easier than if you're USC, who I think they play. I think USC doesn't have to travel back east further than Nebraska. I think the rest of the year.
Yeah. They've done some of the schools favors. They've done other ones no favors whatsoever. Remember UCLA, that graphic pregame? It was insane. It's like they went to Hawaii, they went to Penn State, then they went back here, then they went to Washington, then they went to
LSU,
Rutgers, then they went to LSU, and it's like, Jesus, like what are we doing here? That's good news. Possible night game for the whiteout. That is what everyone's been begging for. That's what everyone wants to see. No one wants to see the whiteout during the day, and it's still a good atmosphere during the day.
I mean, nobody wants to see this week's game during the day either.
That's also true.
I mean, it. Without going into too much, Saturday is going to be just an absolute nightmare to get into if you're going to that game.
Good luck.
I'm, I live a little bit of ways from State College, so I'm actually gonna be crashing at our friend Zach Saeko's house Friday night. But yeah, that game is gonna be a nightmare to get into. Noon kickoff, top 5 matchup. CollegeGameday, Fox is going to be there, of course, and then you add the entire Donald Trump thing to it as well. And an insane logistical nightmare becomes an even bigger insane logistical nightmare. Hopefully, whoever is in charge of figuring out all these logistics for Penn State and State College this weekend are getting paid handsomely, because I would not want that job this week.
I know a Pennsylvania trooper out that way, who works out that way, I should say. And he basically told me it's just going to be one way in, one way out. It's too much of a risk, and number one, there's not really that many other ways in. Number two, it's too much of a risk with everything that's happened. And I'm not making this a political thing, but it's just after everything that happened at his other rally in Pennsylvania, they're going to take every precaution necessary. So if you're going to that game, I shit you not, you might be better off sleeping over. If you're not sleeping over somewhere the night before, you might be screwed that morning. It's going to be a logistical nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I was texting Zach because we usually like to carpool to games since he's on my way. And, I jokingly said, so we're leaving at midnight, right? And obviously he only lives like 20 minutes from Beaver Stadium. And I said, and we both said, I said it jokingly, and I added that, but I mean, at the same time, it's kind of partially serious at that point too. It's might as well find a way to sleep in your car. But hopefully they open the lots as early as they can on Saturday.
So this is my last question for you. CollegeGameday is coming to campus. They're going to have to pick a guest picker sooner or later.
Yeah.
I believe they've done. Keegan Michael Key has already done it once or twice. I think twice actually.
All right.
Laura Spencer has done it once. Who would you pick as a notable Penn State alumni to be the guest picker here? I've seen Bo Nickel try to throw his hat in the ring, and I think that'd be a good one. But I think that they also want someone with more personality, a bigger name. Like they always are going to go for these huge names. I really don't know. Like I've went back and forth and back and forth. I can't really find a
Um,
specific name. Like,
um, Honestly, you go somebody like a LeVar Arrington.
he would get the
Uh,
juice. Juice is
you
flowing.
get you
Yeah.
definitely get the juices flowing. Um, oh, it wouldn't get the juices as flowing. It would get Penn State fans juices flowing.
Hmm.
But Tama Hali would be a great guest picker.
Okay,
Um,
that'd be a good one.
Many Penn State fans, will, of course, remember his big hit back in almost 20 years ago now that helped
Hmm.
seal the win for Penn State over Ohio State. Um, I'm looking at the list of alumni here, trying to figure out uh, somebody who would be a really fun pick.
Bruce Banner. I mean,
Uh,
I'm looking through the names. Like, it's hard to find like a
is
really big like notable name. Like,
Did the Cowboys have their bye week yet?
I don't know about the
They're
Cowboys.
they're not off this week. Not off this week. So Mike is out.
Oh yeah, they just
Um,
played Monday. I forgot.
yeah, that's tough. That really is tough.
I don't know what you do there. It is. I'm looking through the list of notable alumni, and I can't find a name that screams like they might just do Keegan Michael Key again for the sole fact that he's funny. He gets the job done, and he'll dress up like James Franklin again, which is always a good time.
Yeah, it will be. I'll be interested to see who that pick as a guest picker because yeah, there's definitely a couple ways they could go there, but it is it would be a tough pick here
I
to
don't know
say
what
this.
what their goal is too. Like, are you trying to get like a big fancy name that's going to draw views and this and that? Probably. Does a girl like a guy, or so I should say, a girl like Ali Krieger kind of fit that mold? World
I
Cup
think
soccer.
yeah,
Is she
I think
gonna?
it could fit the mode for sure.
I'm trying to think who else. Like, there's really, yeah, I really got nothing. I think Bo Nickel actually might be a really good one. I'm, you know what? Consider me on the Bo Nickel train. I think Bo Nickel deserves it, and I think Bo Nickel should have a good shot at it. I think he'd bring views. He's a notable name in the sport of MMA,
Yeah,
and I think that would get a lot of MMA fans involved. And there's a big fan base there, so I'm all in on Bo Nickel, and you get the right
yeah,
wrestling program as well, of course.
yeah. I think that's. I think Bo would be a solid choice. Yeah, but it's tough because Penn State doesn't have many. Well, basketball season starts, so that's out. But
Hmm.
Indiana went with Kyle Schwarber this year. Um,
True.
I forget honestly half the other game day pickers this season. Um,
Yeah,
but
my mind switches every week. Once that game's over, that weekend's over. Oh, next week.
yeah, it'll be interesting.
But all right, that's all we really got for today. A little bit of a shorter episode. We'll have more later this week. We'll have a game preview Thursday morning, I think. I don't know. That's still to be determined. We'll have a game preview at some point this week. Um, we'll also have a recruiting preview because that list is growing. If you haven't checked it out already, the Lions Den forum on pennstate.rivals.com has a long list. It sounds like you might have a guest
We
picker.
we may yeah. I think if you're going, there's a Trace McSorley. I think would be
Oh,
a good
yeah.
pick, an obvious pick. Um,
That's a good one.
don't think he's up to all too much right now, unfortunately.
Mhm.
At least with football, but he would make sense. Obviously, led Penn State to that, help lead Penn State to that win. You could go with somebody like Grant Haley. Is Haley still in the league?
I don't think so, but I'm not really sure, to be honest.
He is a free agent, so I mean Grant could work. Now Grant wouldn't get what Trace at least would get would be a name that nationally people recognize.
Yeah.
Um, even if it's for the song more than his career, which I mean his career is obviously pretty damn
Shout
good
out
as
Matty
well.
Fresh.
Yeah, I'll go with Trace as the guest picker this week. It would definitely get Penn State fans amped up.
Okay, cool. I got Bo Nickel. You got Trace McSorley. I think either one would be a really good take or a real good pick, I should say. But yeah, that's all we really got for today. Like I said before, recruiting visitor list is 30 deep. I think I have it already, something like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a deep. I'm sure that will be closer to 50, 60
Yeah.
by later this week, and have a couple big additions coming too.
Yeah, of course. So if you haven't already, check that out. Plenty more on the Lions Den forum, the Penn State football forum, pennstate.rivals.com, happyvalleyinsider.com. If you're using SeatGeek to get your tickets for this game, use the promo code Penn State Rivals. We have the promo code Penn State Rivals on a bunch of random stuff. Even if you're ordering anything online, just throw it in there. It might work, it might not, depends on the site. But for me and Dylan, that's really another episode of the Penn State 365 podcast. Signing off.